Alright, we're going to talk about the fundamental theorem of algebra. And it sounds fancy, but really all it is it's a theorem that says that any polynomial of n degree has n roots. To look at, a little bit complicated. When we break it down, it makes a lot of sense. The big but that should make sense to us now is we may need to use complex numbers. So this kind of eliminates that no solution part when we are talking about numbers, and this lets us know that yes, in fact, there should be roots. No matter if they're complex or real, there should be roots for any of the problems we're looking at. If we look at a polynomial, right here we have 2x to the fourth plus 6x minus 5. Each of those are our terms. If we look at the leading degree of this polynomial, would be a fourth degree. All the fundamental theorem of algebra tells us is that there will be 4 roots, which means there's going to be 4 different times when at some point that polynomial crosses the x-axis, when our function is equal to 0. If we continue on, if we look, we've got the polynomial 4x to the third plus 2x squared minus 7. The leading coefficient, as you can see here, we've got a 3 again. This is a degree 3 polynomial, which means we should expect 3 different roots. Down below, we've got an explanation of a root. A root is the same thing as a 0. That just means we are finding the answer to this function when we set it equal to 0. That is a root. That'll be important. So yeah, like we said, polynomial is equal to 0. That's what our root is. And if you see here, this is in fact the graph of 4x to the third plus 2x squared minus 7. You can see if we follow this graph through, it has 3 different roots, or 3 different zeros. They can be used interchangeably. So it's a good thing to know. Got to be able to understand what a root is, how to find a root, what we're doing with a root. You've also got to be able to solve. So if we look up here, we've got the polynomial x squared minus 9. First thing we have to do when we're solving a polynomial, obviously set it equal to 0. If we're going to find the 0, we're going to find the roots. That means we're going to find when this is equal to 0. So we'll start by setting it equal to 0. Now, simple algebra takes over. So the first thing we should do would be to add 9 to both sides, which gives us x squared is equal to 9. Last step in solving now would be to take the square root of both sides, and the answer will be x equals, now this is where the 2 roots comes in, plus or minus 3, or positive or negative 3. You can see that over here. We've got, if we graph this function, we will see our 2 roots at 3 and negative 3. This is important to note. That is equal to plus or minus 3, because positive 3 and negative 3 squared are both equal to 9. If we look at another example here, probably hard to see. We'll bring it over. Alright, so we're trying to find the roots of 3x squared minus 12. First thing we want to do, set it equal to 0. So if we set it up, we've got 3x squared minus 12 is equal to 0. Again, you could go through and solve this like we solved the last one, where you're adding 12, divide by 3, take the square root. Instead, this time we're going to find a common factor. We're going to talk about factoring. Both of these have a factor of 3. So we're going to factor out a 3. We'll be left with x squared minus 2. The whole thing is still equal to 0. Oh, I'm sorry. Helps to know how to factor. Right? Now we can solve. First thing we'll do, divide by 3 on both sides to cancel out this 3. That'll get rid of this. 0 divided by 3 is 0. We're left with x squared minus 4 equals 0. Same as we solved the first one, we're going to add 4 to both sides. We'll be left with x squared equals 4. Last step will be to take the square root of both sides of this function, again leaving us with x equals positive or negative 2, which we could see over here is our solution. Now again, when we would see this graph, what that graph means is that we will see something looks like this. Those zeros are those points where it is in fact crossing the x-axis, where our y value is equal to 0, will be positive 2 and negative 2.